Hungary's Prime Minister Vikor Orban is making headlines with a bold new policy. He's offering major tax breaks for mothers. It's the extension of an initiative to help reverse the country's declining birth rate. But will it work? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Vikor Orban says he's making history as he introduces income tax exemptions for mothers to make Hungary a family-centred economy. It's not the only European country trying to boost birth rates with financial incentives. But will Orban's policy be enough to convince more Hungarians to have children?
We are launching the largest tax cut in Europe and indeed in the entire Western world. With this, we are opening a new chapter in the history of the Hungarian economy. We are creating the world's first family-centred economy.
It is an unprecedented plan from the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The aim? To encourage couples to have more children, as Hungary's birth rate continues to fall.
Mothers with one child will be exempt from income tax until the age of 30, while mothers with 2 or more children will never pay income tax again.
Over the past decade, Hungary's population has declined from 9.9 million in 2014 to 9.54 million in 2024. A drop of nearly 400,000, that's despite pernatalist policies such as housing subsidies, childcare benefits and family loans. But many are questioning how Hungary's economy will sustain such a costly policy in the long run. Other parts of Europe are also experiencing falling birth rates. France has maintained one of the highest birth rates in the EU, thanks to its pro-family policies, including generous parental leave and childcare subsidies. Meanwhile, similar initiatives in Poland and Italy, like cash benefits and tax breaks, have failed to reverse declining birth rates. In 2024, J.D. Vance praised Hungary's approach to increasing family growth, urging similar policies in the US. But as American conservatives rally behind Orban's policies, can they deliver results? Or is it a political strategy ahead of the 2026 elections?
Well, let's bring in our guests. In Budapest, in Hungary, we have Attila Beneda. He is Deputy State Secretary for Families at the Ministry of Culture and Innovation. Also joining us from the Hungarian capital, we have Attila Melegh. He's a sociologist and president of the Demographic Committee of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. And here in the studio with me, we've got Norman Baker. He's a former Home Office Minister in the UK government. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Attila Beneda, just tell me, how is this going to work? What's the thinking behind this Hungarian government policy?
Well, first of all, good afternoon to everyone. And I would like to share our point of view about several family policies. So, first of all, when we started our governance in 2010, there will be a disaster in Hungary, morally, economically, and so on. So we started to build a kind of new society based on 2 pillars. First of all, on families, and second one is on work. So that's the 2 points we decided to work on, and from this we decided to strengthen families, and all of our family supports based on these 2 pillars to help strengthening families, to help them to survive, and of course to help them to have as much kids as they really wish for.
So this is a big, bold policy, Attila Beneda. How do you think it'll be received by Hungarian families?
Well, as we see, it is really accepted. Well, of course, one answer is that we won 3 more elections. So the family's answer was yes to these family policies. But on the other hand, we were able to give them more than 30 family supports, and I think Hungary has the most complex, flexible, and targeted family support system. In this, one very strong point is how to help them with the taxation. And first of all, we introduced a family tax benefit system, and this year and next year we double it. Family tax allowances, and the other point is that we widened the personal income tax exemptions.
Thanks, Attila. Attila Melegh, just tell me, is this a clever way of also boosting a declining population in terms of birth rate numbers?
Well, all population policy measures targeting fertility have been very important, and I'm sure that this is also going to be important, and it is also going to have some positive effect. We have to say two things. Hungary has been developing this population policy system for a very long time, even a longer period of time. Since the 1970s, this country has been exceptionally careful about these things. Due to the reason that fertility started declining rather early, and since the 1990s there was a dramatic drop in the 1990s and early 2000s, and then during the 2010s it was coming back to a certain higher level, and now we see again a little bit of a decline in this and some kind of a stagnation in this. So fertility has been low for a longer period of time, and it causes headache from all kinds of political and social point of view, because this means aging, this means quite a number of negative effects. We can also say that Hungary is not alone in this. Eastern Europe, the whole region, has been the first to turn negative on population development. Hungary was actually the very first in the 1980s already. So this leads to some kind of a demographic fragility. This demographic fragility in the region is coupled with also out-migration. So here there are some serious problems. So all measures which try to combat one or several of these elements are, of course, extremely welcome. The question is, and that's what we need to discuss, is whether the society, how it's going to react to this, plus very importantly, whether a certain cyclical effect and certain problems can be avoided.
Well, in London, we have Keith Pilbeam. He is Professor of International Economics and Finance. That's at City University of London. Keith, nobody else in the world has ever tried to do this. I'm guessing there's a good reason why.
Well, if you want women to have children, then, avoiding them paying income tax is not necessarily a bad thing, because it gives a big economic incentive. Now, why haven't people tried it? Because it could potentially be very costly, of course. So there's many other ways of persuading people to have children without exempting them from income tax. So, for example, subsidy payments is direct payment. And you can also be more careful with such a policy, because you can sort of say, well, maybe for the first kid, you have, a big amount. The second kid may be slightly less, and maybe if you want a third kid, you could have even more, So you could actually tailor the policy. When you do it just on income tax, it will depend, the benefits will tend to be the rich people that pay the most tax, of course. And the poor people won't, benefit quite so much. Now, who do you want to have the kids? So the rich ones or the poor ones, or do you not mind? So the economics is, depends what the tax rate of the person and how much they'll benefit.
Thanks, Keith. I want to bring in Norman Baker.
If they weren't paying tax to begin with, then there's no benefit.
Thanks, Keith. Norman, give me your reading of this. You worked in government at the highest level here.
Well, first of all, there's a question as to whether or not it's going to be effective. That's one thing which you have to establish, and whether or not people who don't necessarily want to have children now will be encouraged to do so. I think people will make up their own minds as to whether they want children or not, and I'm not sure it's ethical to try and push them to have children if they don't want to have them in the first place. I'm in favour of making sure that children, when they are born, are properly protected and funded, and that's why in this country, in the UK, for example, we have child benefit, which makes sure that money goes to the mother to ensure that children can be raised properly. And there's also money, of course, for early years education and so on. So I think once children are here on this planet, it's right to protect them, but whether or not we should be encouraging them is another matter. I'm not personally in favour of social engineering by governments. I'm not sure it has a very good record. And this isn't the same as Hungary, but if you look at what happened in China, they had a policy of one child only, and they penalised parents for only one child. That's now gone into reverse because they made a mess of it, and we've now got a situation in China where they're encouraging more people to have children. So, you know, this is the government trying to tell people how many children they should have. I don't think that's a very sensible and ethical policy.
Norman, can I just ask you as well, is there a concern here over perhaps resentment from women who are trying to start a family and nothing's happening? They go to work every day and they're seeing colleagues with 2, 3 children, 4 children, and they're getting no taxation whatsoever. And then perhaps just kind of bitterness growing into the workforce?
Well, that's why I think it's better to have a system of help from the government for children who are born, rather than try to encourage children to be born, which is a different concept entirely. It's also the case that if this policy were to be successful, and I understand Hungary's had a policy already where you have a tax break for 4 children or more, I think I'm right in saying, and clearly that's not worked fully because obviously they have to bring some amendment in now to try and encourage more children by different means. But if you're going to have a system whereby you encourage women to have more children and therefore probably to stay at home, then you are skewing the workforce. And you're encouraging women not to be in full-time employment, which that might be the right policy for the development of the economy in any particular country, Hungary or anywhere else.
Attila, Beneda, just tell me, what's the economic impact? I mean, is there going to be a big tax hit to the tax take in Hungary on this? I mean, how can you afford to do this?
Well, first of all, I would like to state that in our point of view, the most important thing that to have children should not be a financial disadvantage for the families according to those who don't have kids. And secondly, we think that our family system, I mean our family supports, and especially our taxation, is not line on the budget, but it's an investment for the future, because we try to think in the future on the most important thing to have as many children as parents wished for. And I'm sure you know that there is no European country who have a good enough total fertility rate. So, and the other very important point that in all European countries, parents wish for more kids than they finally will have. So we try to help them in that. And economically, well, the family taxation and the personal income tax exemption for mothers of 4, or the youngsters under 25, and mothers under 30. So it worked. We have better data, and well, economically we are fine. So we don't find it that solution economically as well.
Attila, Melegh, just give me your impression then of what Hungarian people think of this policy. How is it being received in the Hungarian media?
But I think that in case you look at opinion polls, the approval rate for such policies are rather high and rather good. So in that sense, the question is not that. But sociologically speaking, I think the big problem in this respect is that people between the age of 20 and 40, they are nowadays facing a rather difficult and very complex situation in terms of partnership, in terms of career, in terms of loneliness, because it's a problem, the instability of partnerships. So there are various factors which we have to take into account in the way that whether such policies can really achieve what they would like to achieve. The other thing is that such policy measures are positive, but they have also some kind of a cyclical effect, meaning that in the beginning they mobilize people, but later, in case you mobilize people and the timing of such like giving birth is going down, this means that later you can't reach the population which would be positively reacting to this. So that it introduces some kind of a cyclical effect into the whole thing as well. So I think we have to always have a complex picture, and I think Hungary, in its demography, it needs a complex treatment, including mortality, migration, fertility, and family formation. Very much.
Thanks, Attila. Norman, there is an election coming up April of next year in Hungary. Just talk me through the politics of this electioneering. I mean, if any leader unveiled a policy like this, families are just going to say, yes, please.
Well, look, I mean, in any country in the world, if a government proposes a big tax cut, then people say it's a good idea. I mean, that's just human nature. Whether it's a good idea for the economy or for the country as a whole and what the long-term consequences are, people don't think about. They just think about their next wage packet. So I've no doubt that it'll be a popular policy. Whether it's a sensible policy is not a matter entirely.
How do you think a policy like this will be received in the UK, for example, if Keir Starmer came out and said, next time round, vote for me, any woman with 2 or more children will pay 0 income tax?
Well, I mean, you've got to look at each individual country and its political context. I mean, at the moment, as you know, in the UK, there's a huge controversy over cuts for people on disability benefits. So if Keir Starmer were to propose that at the same time as cutting people's disability benefits, I think that would be a very unsensible and very dangerous political move to make.
Attila, Beneda, to you. You've got an election coming up April of next year. We see in the opinion polls Mr. Orban is very popular in Hungary. How much of this policy do you think is about winning the election next year?
Well, we are working on our family support system. I hope the whole country will accept it and will be happy with that. And there is one very important point about the economical question as well, and according to the elections. So we created more than 1 million jobs. Women's and mothers with little kids employment rate is one of the highest in Europe. So we are very optimistic about the elections, and we hope that we will win again, and we will continue to support families.
Thanks, Attila. Keith Pilbeam, the Hungarians are calling this family-centred economics. Would you like to see more countries putting the family at the heart of the economy and giving working families a boost and real incentives?
Well, that depends if you want to have more children, of course. So people will respond to economic incentives. That's clear. And let's be clear that a lot of young people do struggle. So when you've got kids, they're expensive. People quickly find out. Now, the question is, do you give people life exemption? What about people that can't have children? For example, this policy sort of discriminates against them because they won't be able to have children anyway. You're going to have people maybe have children then actually don't really want them. They did it for the economics. So it does throw up some societal concerns when the government provides this kind of incentive. But young people, they struggle. And with kids, it could be positive as well, because when you have kids, it can be stressful on relationships and things like that. So, and financial pressure. So, but ultimately, someone's got to pay taxes for public services. Now, and the other issue, of course, is do you give more money for having girls or boys, and things like this can be thrown up by the policy. So you've got to be careful. We've seen with China when they started to, have the one-child policy, as was mentioned, this can cause trouble down the road because they started to have lots of boys and not enough girls. So one's got to be a little bit careful with this kind of thing, I think, and families are probably. But if you want to provide incentives, I don't see why not give it a go, but it can be very expensive. Lifelong exemption. What government is allowed to say for the rest of their lives? Other governments might have different thoughts when they come in later. So it does raise a number of issues, this.
Attila, Melegh, we've seen other countries in Europe see their populations grow significantly because of migration, and we see Hungary is not massively in favour of a big influx of migrants. Do you think that is perhaps influencing Viktor Orban's thinking here?
Well, I would separate two things. One is, of course, a political communication, and luckily I'm not an expert of political communication because I need to deal with the society, and in that sense, that's one level. In terms of migration, Hungary has been positive in terms of net migration in case we take into account all the people who come in, including those who are receiving Hungarian citizenship outside the country and then they are moving in. So since 1990, we have been always positive in this respect. So migration has been helpful in terms of not reducing the population size. Of course, the debate around migration is the selectivity of migration and then how this policy is to be implemented and in what way. But very importantly, the Hungarian economy, and it's crystal clear in the recent programs of the Hungarian government as well, needs extra labor force, and they are demanding this. The overall evaluation of that is, of course, very complex.
Norman, to you, if this works in Hungary, do you think countries like Italy, where they have a falling birth rate and serious problems with their population, do you think the Italians, for example, might look at this and think it's worked for the Hungarians?
Well, first of all, you won't be able to tell whether it's worked immediately. It will take a very long time to work out the societal consequences of this. And by the way, Keith's point is right. A government cannot tie the hands of a future government. So it's not sensible or credible, actually, to say this is a lifetime exemption, because if another government comes in 5 or 10 years' time, they may cancel that. And then the person who thinks he got tax exemption for life will find they haven't. There are also consequences, I think, to be taken into account, which are not immediate. For example, if people aren't at the moment wanting to have children, and they have them only because of the financial incentive, then does that mean they actually want the children, or do they want the tax break that comes with the children? And if they just want the tax break, that's not a very good platform on which to have children and raise them.
Do you think there's possibly legal wrangles down the decades over this, that if a woman comes forward in a few years' time and a new Hungarian government changes its mind, and a woman says, hang on, I only had 2 children because you promised me tax exemption?
Well, I think the position internationally is the same, that no government can tie the hands of a future government. And if a future government says you've changed a policy, they've changed a policy, and that's the end of it, I'm afraid.
Attila, Beneda, just talk me through the time scale on this then. When will it all be implemented, and when will we start seeing this take effect in Hungary?
Well, the personal income tax exemption for mothers with 3 kids will be introduced from the 1st of October, and for the mothers with 2, we start in 4 steps from the 1st of January next year.
And Attila, Beneda, again to you. How much of a talking point has this been in your country? What are people saying? You're out and about, you're talking to voters, you're talking to neighbours and friends. Has this been a big topic of discussion?
I think so, yes, absolutely. And of course, when we start to introduce new legislation, we have strategic partners from the civil societies as well, family who cares about families. So we discuss with them. Sometimes we ask them for the feedbacks, and we change anything when it needed. So it's I think it's one of the most important topics now in Hungary. And as I see, the society agrees in that.
Keith, final assessment, just give us your honest opinion here. Is this a genius idea or crackpot economics?
Well, it's not crackpot economics, because we know if you provide incentives, people will follow them. But the possibilities are sort of numerous, because you may have women, that are working now, paying tax, then they decide to have kids. So you're actually reducing the labour force short term, and maybe they weren't going to have kids at that point. So it's going to introduce some distortions into people's decision making. And some people are going to have kids and just say, OK, now it's great. I'm just tax exemption as well. It's just like giving them free money, which they were going to have kids anyway. So it's going to be quite costly in that sense. All right. So it's worth a try, though, if you don't try something. But lifelong exemptions seem to me to be pretty expensive policies. And as tying other governments to that, I think it's got problems.
Attila, Melegh, final point to you. In all your studies of demographics in Hungary, is there a genuine concern then about a declining birth rate?
The concern is the population, that's for sure. And we have a long tradition of, since the 19th century, these small nations have been worried about whether they can survive. And then this, on a discursive, on a communication level, this has been going on. In that sense, we are living in very different countries. So England has different traditions than Hungary has. So in that sense, it's always difficult to see it. But I think the big problem, as far as I can see, is that the Hungarian population receives these incentives, and then it is having a positive impact, and this is approved. The question is, in case this changes or it is withdrawn once, then it is going to have very negative effects. So we know one thing about population policies. In case you withdraw it, then it has immediate negative effect.
Attila Melegh, Keith Pilbeam, Attila Beneda and Norman Baker, thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.